Welcome to Gladwin Free Methodist Church. Here's Pastor Steve Decker with Be Holy.
Right. It's kind of funny because I was going to say, have you ever had one of those moments where you're talking to someone and you've had just an experience where you are hearing the words come out of your mouth and it kind of shocks you that, wow, I can't believe I said that. And now I'm getting another signal. We got kids' church? All right, kids, escape now or forever be bored. Jesse's making a break for it. Good deal, Jesse. Anyway, one of those instances where you're talking to somebody and you just can't believe what's coming out of your mouth, or you're evaluating your actions or what you're doing, and in that moment you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I just did this. I can't believe I just said that. Anybody ever done that? Yeah. I think that's a pretty common human experience, right? Sometimes those are just shocking to us for a moment. Sometimes those are, wow, I need to recalibrate, readjust my attitude. And sometimes those are instances that just kind of stick with us as life lessons. I had one of those, about 25 years ago. It was right after high school. My wife's smiling. It doesn't involve me. So about 25 years ago, I was going to a concert at Midland Center for the Arts, of all things. Yes, I was a band geek, so yes, when I was 18, I went to concerts at the Center for the Arts. And I was there with a friend, and he and I were kind of wandering around one of the painted art exhibits and some other aspects of the building prior to the concert. And an older gentleman who worked there kind of began a conversation with us, struck up a conversation. And as we were talking, just in general about the building, about the upcoming concert and the like, I kind of heard in my head, went outside the conversation and heard what I was saying. And it's not that there was anything particularly wrong with what I was saying, but it was how I was saying it. The vocabulary I was using, both in terms of things that would make an English teacher cringe, as well as occasionally things that would make, say, my grandmother blush, as we're having a conversation with this older gentleman. And as I look upon that moment, the reason that stood out to me so distinctly was the contrast between what I was saying and what he was saying. He was we might refer to as a proper gentleman, well-dressed, polite in every regard, certainly not a weakling or a wimp of a man by any stretch, but just very polite, very kind, used proper English and grammar, and was very knowledgeable, and very impactful with his words, without drifting off into some of those words that we might consider to be profanity. And so there was this contrast between how he was speaking and how I heard myself speaking, that in that moment made me aware that, wow, there's a gap here. And I'm troubled by that gap. He doesn't need to come down to my level. There's nothing wrong with him. I need to adjust my actions to this standard that I see, the standard that in the matter of a few minutes I respect. And really the same dynamic works with our spirituality as well. We take a look at and sometimes see or hear ourselves in action. And for those of us who identify as followers of Christ, we begin to maybe occasionally go, wow, I don't think that's what Jesus would have said. I don't think that's what Jesus would have done. And sometimes we kind of go into excuse-making mode and, well, I'm just a sinner saved by grace, or, well, nobody's perfect, but he was, or nobody can ever reach that standard. But that is simply what I said it was. It's just simply coming up with excuses or justifications to make ourselves feel better. And so this morning and next week, we're going to focus on a key verse and look at this idea, this concept, this reality of holiness, of being holy, being like Jesus. And Peter wrote very clearly in his book, 1 Peter, we're going to look for our key verse at chapter 1, and we're going to look at verses 13 through 16 in that. And he says, therefore, preparing your minds for action and being sober-minded, set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. And so Peter, when he's writing this, says, hey, for those of you who have received the grace and are living under the salvation of Jesus Christ, for those of you who have surrendered your life to him, setting your hope, your perspective on that, as his obedient children, don't be bent around to who you once were and the things you once did, the passions of your former ignorance. It says, but the one who called you is holy, which means set apart in a special way for a special purpose. So Jesus, the one who called you, was set apart for a special purpose. Since he is holy, since he is set apart, then you too be set apart in all of your conduct, in everything you do. Be set apart in that so that it stands out. And then he references and ties it back, because remember, in this day and age, they didn't have access to very much of the New Testament at all. It was still being written. And so he goes back and references words from God to Moses, talking to the Israelites, God's people, as they were leaving Egypt, traveling to the Promised Land, traveling to that place of salvation, being freed from slavery. God said to Moses, to them, you shall be holy, for I am holy. And so Peter is tying it back to what they would understand as Scripture and reminding them that, hey, I Peter, I'm not making this up. Okay? This is something that God said. God said, since he is set apart for a special purpose, for something great, as part of his family, you are as well. And then I think, because Peter was a pretty outspoken guy, I think if he were saying this, he would have said, act like you're set apart, live like it. Since God is holy, you too be holy. Now get it together. It's about time you start living up to that. And so we have this standard of a holy God, a holy Jesus whom we follow, whom we serve. And these words telling us that because he is holy, we too ought to be holy. Not because we want to get to heaven, we should behave ourselves. Not because we want to have a good reputation in the church or the community, we should behave ourselves. No. We be holy, we do holy things, we work with a holy mindset because we serve a holy God. Michelle and I recently listened to a couple of sermons by Pastor James McDonald from Harvest Bible Chapel out of Chicago, and he was talking a little bit about this, and one of the things that he went into and really expounded upon the holiness of God comes from Isaiah chapter 6. And what Isaiah wrote here is so good that I couldn't keep it out of today's message just because we recently heard it in somebody else's sermon. So if you have your Bibles with you, turn with me to Isaiah chapter 6, and we get this brilliant picture of the holiness of God. And Isaiah wrote, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke." And so Isaiah is one of those guys who his writing is so eloquent, and his Hebrew that he used is so advanced that sometimes what he writes is wow, we need to break this down a little bit. We need to understand what's really being said here. And that was the people that was hearing it from him, not us, about 3,000 years later. And so, to give some background here, Isaiah was a long-standing, long-time serving prophet of God to the nation of Israel. And he marks this point in time in this writing that in the year that King Uzziah died. King Uzziah had been king for about 52 years when he died. And so the people were used to living and serving under his leadership for a very, very long time. In fact, most of the nation of Israel would have struggled to remember when he was not king. And so, given that, when the king died, that kind of brought about some anxiety and some nervousness amongst the people. Certainly wondering, what's next? I mean, my goodness, we wonder what's next at this point in time, from one election day to the next, right? And we're involved in the process. They weren't involved in the process. They just had 52 years of the same king. And so here they are really, truly wondering, what's next? What's going to happen to the economy? What's going to happen to our health care insurance? What's going to happen to our taxes? All those same things. And so anyway, in that year, Isaiah has this vision of God. And he sees God sitting on a throne. Not so much of a surprise. The Almighty God sitting on the throne, high and lifted up. And the train of his robe filled the temple. Now we think about it, and we think about, formal gowns, wedding dresses have trains, right? And that's a special, special thing. Most women, if they have the encounter or the experience of wearing a train, for the most part, it generally happens once in a lifetime. And it signifies to everyone around that, hey, in this setting, in this context, this is the most important person. Look at how amazing they are. Wonder at them. And so, of course, when we look at that, even today, the longer the train, the greater the glory, the greater the wonder, the greater the splendor. And in this case, we see that Isaiah says, the train of the Lord's robe filled the temple. It didn't go just a little ways. It filled the temple, signifying just an indescribable amount of glory. And then there were seraphim above him. And it doesn't number the seraphim. Isaiah doesn't number the seraphim. He said, hey, just above him were all these seraphim. And each had these 6 wings. Because they were in the splendor of God, they covered their face. So they couldn't look upon him. They couldn't gaze upon him. And they covered their feet, signifying that because they were unholy, they were nowhere near as holy as God. Not only could they not look upon him, but it was unbearable to be seen by him. And with the other 2 wings they flew, and they cried out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." Now, in the Jewish language, the Hebrew language in the biblical days, when a word like that was repeated 3 times, it was to give an idea of the magnitude, the impact of it. And so the seraphim are crying out, "Holy, holy, holy," talking about the greatness of God's holiness. We can look at it this way. The last few days have been hot, right? Well, the last few weeks have been hot. It's been hot. And it's been hot that if you're not careful and spend too much time outside, you might get burned. But if we go home today and it's too hot to cook in the house, so I fire up the grill and I stumble when I'm getting ready to put the burgers on the grill, and my hand comes in contact with the grill. That grill is hot, right? And not only did I get a little burn that I want some aloe lotion, but I got burned where it might need additional treatment. And so anyway, we go through that, and we're over to Jimmy's place and helping him do some work with horseshoes and things like that, right? He's got the forge running, and we don't know really what we're doing, and so we come in contact with that red hot metal. And all of a sudden, that is hot, and we're getting burned. Okay? And so when the seraphim are calling out here, not only is God holy, and he's more than holy, he is holy. Indescribably holy. The only way that we can begin to communicate it is that we use this literary device to repeat it 3 times. That way, we know exactly what we're talking about with how holy he is. It's not just a little bit, not just a medium amount. He is way holy. And this is what Isaiah is seeing here. And as this happens, because of the power and the might of God's holiness, the foundations of the thresholds shook. The house was filled with smoke. Now Isaiah was awestruck at that. Who wouldn't be, right? We too would be awestruck at seeing that, at experiencing that. And the reality is, God is the same today as He was that day, and the year that King Uzziah died, that Isaiah saw Him high and lifted up with the seraphim above Him, crying out, hey, we can't tell you how holy He is. He is holy, holy, holy. He is the same today as He was then. And so as Peter wrote to us, reminding us of the words of God, because of God's holiness, as His followers, you too need to be holy. You too be holy. The trick is, how in the world do we do that? Right? I mean, I don't know about all of you, but I grew up in a home where I was fortunate enough to have mom and dad together, and dad was retired when I was growing up. Mom didn't work; she was a homemaker, and so I had the structure, the love, the discipline of two parents invested in me full time, and had a community around as well that we were involved in, and the love and support of them as well. But if my mother were here today, one of the things she would tell you about me, because she likes to tell people this, is that had I been their first child, I would have been their only child. Right? I had the instructions, I just wasn't very good at following. I had the teaching, it just must not have stuck. And so we have with this idea of holiness and being holy in response to God's holiness, we have the example, we have the standard in His Word, we have the instructions. How do we do that? If you are like me, somebody who's not very good, evidently, at following instructions, how do you live in this place of holiness? How do you live this out? Well, in Philippians, we get a bit of a clue. We're going to look at Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. And Paul, the Apostle Paul, wrote this letter to the church in Philippi, the Philippian people. And he wrote this letter because while he was in prison, he was so encouraged by what he was hearing about the church in Philippi, what they were doing, how they were functioning, how they were operating as a church, and of course as individual parts of that church. And he was writing to them to thank them, to encourage them to keep doing the same things, because you know what, church in Philippi, right now for the most part, you're really rocking it. You're doing good with this holiness thing. And so what Paul wrote to them in chapter 4, verse 8, as he's closing out this letter, it's a short book. Before your afternoon nap today, maybe take 15 or 20 minutes and read it. But what he's saying towards the end here in verse 8 of chapter 4, he says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable. If there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." It's not a script. It's not a manual on how to behave or exactly what to do and when. But Paul is speaking to a mindset here that when we understand and have even a bit of appreciation for what God has done for us and how the lengths that He went to and continues to go to pursue us, to have a relationship with us. When we understand that, and when we understand that in response to that, and in response to His holiness, we allow our lives to be changed. When we're in that place, in that mindset, not a performance mindset, we pursue the things of truth. We pursue the things of honor. We pursue justice and purity. We appreciate the lovely. We look for and live in a way that is commendable. We act with excellence. We find reason to give praise. Those are the things we do. It's how we live in response to the holiness of God. We reject falsehood. We don't monkey around with the things that are dishonorable. We become agents of justice, and I'm not talking about the criminal system here. But we look out for the defenseless. We care for the vulnerable. We stand for what is right in the treatment of people, whether it's popular or not. No matter how difficult it may be, we pursue purity. We celebrate that which is lovely, that which is commendable. We live for excellence. In other words, we don't kind of mail it in and give a half effort in anything we do. I don't go to work and say, "Nah, I'm just not feeling it today. I'm going to coast." We don't show up for our volunteer commitments or our ministry commitments in church and say, "Boy, I'm just too busy. I throw it together and this will have to do." We don't do those things. We pursue excellence. We say, God is going to get my best. My best at work, my best as a spouse, my best as a parent, my best as a child, my best as a sibling, my best as a Sunday school teacher or an usher or a praise team member or an AV tech who so kindly waves at me and lets me know that I need to do something different. Our best. We pursue that kind of excellence. We give that kind of excellence. And if there is anything worthy of praise, being honest, I think we all have those times where we're grumpy, we're down, we're something, right? And, you know, we're maybe a little bit like Eeyore, you know. Well, it's awful hot today. Well, pretty soon it'll be cold. And of course, it's a lot more serious than that, right? We're in the midst of those things. But if we're being honest, completely honest with ourselves, do we ever reach a point where there is nothing worthy of praise? Have you ever reached a point in your life where there's not one thing to praise God for? Like any church that's together this morning, there's people here that have been through a lot. Some can't imagine what others have gone through. Some would crumble at what others have gone through or are going through. But the reality is, for any of us, there's always something worthy of praise. And so, if we keep that God focus, that because He is holy, I am going to be holy. Not because I want to go to heaven, not because I'm expecting some outcome, not because I'm looking for favor or I'm rallying for God to answer my prayer for the winning lotto numbers or something to that effect. We don't do it for those things. We be holy because God is holy. Wasn't that good grammar? I learned that lesson well, right? We live in holiness because God is holy. And we do so by looking at what Paul gave to the church in Philippi, and God so carefully preserved for us, with living in these things: truth, honor, justice, purity, and so on. Would you pray with me this morning? Heavenly Father, it seems far too often in this day and age that we live and operate with this absolute misconception of who you are. Yes, we want relationship with you. But Lord, do we way too often treat that casually, as a mere friendship? Father, we would ask that this image, this vision, this experience that Isaiah had would be seared in our hearts and our minds so that we can constantly consider and understand your greatness, your majesty, your indescribable holiness. And Lord, that as a result of that, we too would live and walk in holiness. We're such a performance-minded people, Lord. We know that's not your heart's desire. We need your very Holy Spirit to change our minds, change our thinking on that. To free us from treating Christianity, to free us from treating our faith like a set of expectations or behaviors or a checklist to somehow fulfill. Lord, that we would be motivated simply by your greatness and in awe of you. Run towards you and the example that you gave us through your Son, Jesus Christ. And then as we run towards you, Lord, that we become increasingly more like you. We ask it in Jesus' name.